Shalom, and God bless you all. Once more, we thank you for being with us today for Learn Ancient Hebrew lesson number 2. And hopefully, what we have to share with you today um, is beneficial to you in every aspect. The Bible says in Proverbs, knowledge or understanding is the principal thing. So in all thy gettings, in whatever you do, in whatever you acquire, acquire understanding, acquire knowledge. So our mission is to spread the knowledge, the truth of the word of God as it has been passed down to us or as it is being given to us. And we give God all the praise and all the glory. Speaking in the context of the ancient or the early Hebrew, we're speaking of the Ewe language. And Ewe is a name of a person, and this is the guy Ewe mentioned in the Torah. Eber, as you read it from um, left to right, is not the ancient Hebrew pronunciation. This is the Indo-European languages style of pronunciation. It's now read Eber. It's Ever. You read it from right to left, and the B is only by default. And so how did um, Ever gain the appellation or the term? How did Ever become Hebrew? What happened? So we're gonna cover that in this video. And how did Hawwa, okay, which is Eve, how did Hawwa become Eve or Eve? What happened? Hawwa is the original name of the first woman or the first woman as we know it from the Torah. And how did her name become Eve? What happened? So we're going to cover that today in our lesson. And again, our intention is to help us all understand, especially the Torah, as it is written in its original language, which is the Hebrew, the ancient Hebrew language called the Ewe. So let's move on quickly. So the question is, can you or can we understand the names of the Torah? Can we grasp a clear understanding of the culture of the Bible from the perspective of the English language? Can we understand the meaning of Adam or Hawwa, or Cain or Abel, Abe, or Noe, or Lamech, or uh, Eve, or Abraham? Can we understand their names and the culture from the perspective of the English language? The answer is emphatically no. And the reason why is because the English language is very young compared to other language, compared to the ancient Hebrew, compared to the Ewe language, the Ewe. So the English language came about, the one we're speaking now came about uh, around the time of Shakespeare, William Shakespeare. So we're talking about mid 1700, you know. So the English language as we know it is only about 400 to 500 years old. So we cannot explain biblical names and terms and culture based on the English language because the English language is not old enough. It has not been around long enough to give us a clear understanding. As an example, if you go online and you look for the etymology or the origin of the word home, as we now understanding, you will see that it stems from the Germanic or Old English and Dutch from ham and hem or heim. And here you see the arrow. They're telling us that home stems from hem. Look at it closely. You can tell that it is not true. It is not possible. So there is a day and night difference between him and home. So the word home came from somewhere, but where? They don't have the answer. So they're not going to tell you. Now, uh, the origin of the word home is found in the ancient Hebrew language, which is in the Ave, and the word is home. Ahome has been around centuries before the white people or the European came to invade the natives' empires and kingdoms and everything and destroy everything pretty much. So the Ewe is a much older language than the English. The ancient Jewish language, the ancient Hebrew language, is much older than that. The second example is honey. If you go online and look for the etymology of honey, you see the same thing. They will tell you that it has a Dutch origin, honig, honey. And if you come to the bottom here, you will see it says Old High German Honang, Honang, German Harnish, honey of what? Look, of uncertain origin. So they don't know. So that's one example. So if you go to the Bible to the Torah, the ancient Hebrew in Genesis 43 verse 11, we read from the KJV version. It states, "quote And their father, who is here, Jacob, okay, and their father Israel said unto them, If it must be so now, do this: take of the best fruits in the land in your vessels, and carry down the man a present." And the man here is Joseph. A little balm and a little what? Honey, a little honey, spices and myrrh, nuts and almonds. So Jacob was telling his children, hey, if the man was kind to you as you are uh, reporting back to me, please take some presents to him and bring him honey. So we're talking about the patriarchs, you know, Jacob uh, and the Israelites. So you see, they lived centuries, hundreds of years, even before Germany became a nation, before the European nation. So honey, the word honey, even though they're telling you that they don't know where the word comes from, it is in the Bible. Similarly, if you ask them what is the meaning of the name Cain, they will not tell you. They don't know because it is a language that is not in their. Uh, it is a word that is not found in the European language. And where do you find it? It is in the Hebrew language. It is in the Ewe language, a much ancient language. And is Ewe really that ancient? We will show you here in a few. So similarly, if you research the meaning of Cain, they would Cain and Abel, they don't know, and their conclusion is, well, this theory would make the names uh, descriptive of their roles, because since they could not explain it, well, they concluded that, well, Abel was named uh, Abel because he was a herdsman, and Cain was named Cain because he was um, uh, sorry, Abel is thought to derive from a reconstructed word, herdsman. See, so they're suspecting that, oh, Abel's name was Abel because he was a herdsman, and Cain was Cain because he was a farmer, a gardener. You read it, you that's what you read here again because they don't know, they can't tell you. But the meaning of Cain and Abel is, again, once more, in in the original, in the ancient Hebrew language. It is in Ewe. The spelling is here is Kani, which is honey, Ani in Ewe, and then Heve, Ebe, Ebe in the ancient Hebrew. So so it means something. There's a meaning to it, and we're gonna cover that. And I want to show you the meaning of Kani, which became Cain or Cain, and then Abel, Ebe, which became Abel or Ebe. You're not gonna find that in English language, and even if you go to the Hebrew language that is spoken today, you're not gonna get the answer either, because if you scroll down to the Hebrew alphabet, this is what you're gonna see. Okay, this is the original Ewe Hebrew, and then this is the modern um, Hebrew. The A, they're saying Aleph. No, it's not Aleph. It's A. It's A. And the B, they're saying is the Bet. It's not Bet. You know why? You know why? Because look, when they went to Babylon, when some of them went to Babylon, or when the Babylonian or the foreigner came back and to take over the places, because the Jews, the locals or the natives were scattered everywhere. They could not understand the language, so they fashioned it. They remolded the language, excuse me, so they can pronounce it better. So you see the Yiddish and you have Ashkenazi. Those are Europeans. So the language has changed. So if you want to understand the ancient Hebrew language, and you recourse back to the modern Hebrew, you're gonna be even more confused. As a matter of fact, some of the accents that they have added to the language is said what? It is only for to help the the foreigners. They're not generally accepted. It is down here below. So to understand the ancient Hebrew language, you have got to go back further, much further, to the ancient Hebrew, which is the Ewe. You know, these signs here, we see here the apostrophe and all of that. It says these are intended for Yiddish. You see that? They are not used in Hebrew aside from in loan words. So the borrowed words, words that are not from the ancient Hebrew, so the Yiddish. So to understand the Hebrew, the culture, or the meaning of the names, you gotta go back further. And we're speaking of the ancient Hebrew, which is the Ewe, the Ale, the A, and the B. You're not gonna get it from them. A long story short. And speaking of the ancient Hebrew, we're speaking of Eve. After Eve, and again, this is the European transliteration of the name in in the Hebrew, excuse me, or in the Eve. You have to read it backwards. You gotta remember that the ancient Hebrew does not have or did not have vowels. It was all consonants. So it is read backwards. So the v, you see, ever, the v sound is not found. They don't have it in the English or in the Greek or the rest. So it has been substituted with the b. Listen closely. V, right? It sounds like a b. So that's where the b come from. So Eve, and they couldn't say it, so they transliterated to Eber. So the name is not Eber, the name is Eve. It is read backward, Eve. Now, if you go down, you will have more understanding. So I will show you. So Eber or Eve is the father of is the grandfather of Abraham. You see here, Abraham. Okay, he was the grandfather of Abraham. And then it is said here in the Septuagint and other Christian Bibles derived from it. Eber or Eve is called Heber or Ever, and his father is called Salah. His son is called Peleg, born when Eve or Heber was 134 years old, and he had other sons and daughters. He lived to be 404 years old. So, according to Abu Isa, Eber or Eber, the grandson of Shem, refused to help with the building of the Tower of Babel. So he was alive at the time. So his language was not confused when it was abandoned. He and his family alone retained the original human language, a concept referred to as lingua humana in Latin, which is what the Hebrew, meaning what? A language named after ever. See, this is where Eʋe come from. Ever is ever. That's his name. And the Gbe is the language. So Eʋe, meaning what? The language of ever. And now, how has ever become Hebrew? It is it is here. Okay. So the name Hebrew meant those who cross. So Hebrew is the transliteration of ever. And how did that happen? Now, earlier I told you that the east the v sound was uh, was substituted with the b. Right now, look here in Genesis 14 verse 13, we read, it says, a man who has escaped came and reported this to Abram the Hebrew, the Ewe, the Ewe. So that's again the origin of the word. Now look closely at the word Hebrew. Okay, Hebrew. Look at it. Abram, Abraham, Abram. You see, in Abram, see you're getting to what? Hebrew, 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 Hebrew. That's how Eve became Eber and then Hebrew. That's where the name came from. So when we say Hebrew, we're talking about Eve. And how do you get the correct pronunciation? If you go to www.pronouncekiwi.com/every, I see Ivri, But again, you gotta remember that in Hebrew, in the Ewe, in the original or ancient Hebrew, you gotta read the words backwards. So it'll be Ewe. Okay, the R is silent. So it'll be Ewe, Ewe. So if you click on any of this one here, it says Ivry. So the Europeans are reading it from uh, left to right, Ivry. But if you read it from again, that's Ivry from left to right. But if you read it from uh, Ivry, 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 Ivry. So if you read it from uh, let's try this one here, Canada. It'll be this one here, Ivry. Okay, let's try this one here. Uh, every, 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 every. So if you go to if you recourse to all the European language, almost all of them, they'll read it every. But in Hebrew, it's what you gotta read it from from right to left. It'll be you gotta remember that in the Hebrew writing there is no vowel. There was no vowel. So the I you're seeing right there, the I you're seeing here is but an apostrophe. Okay, so the R is silent. Then you have v. You see v. Uh uh the R is silent, and you have the v. It's not a V, it's a v. Say of ever. By the European are reading it Ibri. That's where you have the word Hebrew, Ibri, Hebrito or Hebrew. The Hebrews come from, if that makes sense. Okay. So Hebrew or the Ewe happened to be my native language. The ancient Hebrew happened to be my mother native language. That's how I can understand it. That's how I am able to understand the meaning of Adam and Eve and the rest of them because it is my native language. Oral traditions, what we learn from our parents, has much power and it comes before the written form. We learn to speak before we learn to read. We know, children know how to say things and understand. They know how they understand things before they are able to write it. You know, that's why Jesus in Matthew chapter 5, especially verses 21, he says to the crowd, quote, "Ye have heard that it was said of them of what old time, thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment." So once more, the oral tradition is nothing to be ignored. We learn that we should not kill even before the law was given, before we saw or before we knew of the written form. Similarly, he repeated in verse 27. It says, quote, "Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not commit adultery." It was oral. The laws of God were oral before they were written. And he said it again in verse 43. It repeated three times. "Ye have heard that it has been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemies." You see, it was an oral tradition. It precedes the law. The laws of God were first and foremost oral before they were given on tablets of stone, which is the written form. So that's how I knew and understood the Ewe language or the ancient Hebrew language. because it is my native language. So um, this is kind of wrapping it up. Recapitulation. That's how um, Eve become Hebrew. You know, um, the word again is Eve. Okay, it became Hebrew because the European read it backwards, whereas it is supposed to be read normally from right to left. They read it from left to right. See, Eve. This is not I in Hebrew. It is an apostrophe. It is an apostrophe, and the sound is and that's how um, Eve has become Hebrew because they are reading it from left to right, whereas it is supposed to be read from right to left. You know, Eve they're reading Hebrew, it become Hebrew. You know, and it is the same thing we see with Eve. The name was Hawwa, and Ha is it is composed of Ha and Wa, and Ha means side. You know, it'll be this one here, the side, which is uh, which we see in the in the account of Genesis. You know, a side, a man's side, where Eve was taken from. So Eve means ha and wa is for female, to it denotes female, and ha is the side. So Eve uh, means Hawa means what she is taken from Adam's side. So Adam called him Adam. Sorry, excuse me. Adam called her Hawa because she is taken from his side. So he's saying that this is my female side. My female side. That's Hawa. That's what Hawa means, and we covered that in our previous lesson. How did um, Hawa became Eve. Again, if it goes back to the English language, okay, it starts from it begins from the Germanic origin. The Germans, uh, this is what Volkswagen, even though it's a V. The German reads V as an F and the W as a V. So that's where the English word folks come from, which means people. And what wagon, it's not wagon, it's wagon in German. It means what? Transportation or a car. So Volkswagen means what? A public transportation or a transportation intended for the people, for people. So similarly, Hawa was said, or the Germans or the European will say Hava, which is Hava, and then the French will say Eve, Eve, and the English picked it up, to say Eve, So it's just linguistics, and so to understand the meaning of this, we have got to go back to the Eve or to the ancient Hebrew language, not the one that is spoken there today. Because what? When they have gone to captivity in Babylon, they have learned it. So it has been tainted with Aramaic and with the Yiddish European language. So you cannot understand the Bible of the names of the Bible if you dwell on those. We have got to go back in time, and that's what we're trying to do, to bring things back uh, as they were in the beginning, so we may grasp a clear and concise understanding of the Bible, of the Torah. It is for our good, and it is God's pleasure. So we thank Him and we thank God, and we thank you for your patience and for your willing to learn these things. My name is Halali. It means Yahweh is salvation, Joshua. And this is our channel, the Chosen Vessel channel. the Preacher's channel. And thanks again for watching, and thanks for for listening to these teachings. And may God bless you um, above and beyond your expectations. Until next time.